The wind howled across the barren plains of Vetra 9, carrying dust and glowing blue sparks that danced like wild fireflies. The storms of this world were unlike anything on Earth. Lightning came not in streaks, but in waves, rolling walls of light that cracked the sky open again and again. Inside a small metal hut stood Sergeant Alan Reed, a human engineer and former soldier. He had been sent here to keep the communication relays running between the frontier outposts. It was a lonely job, but Alan didn't mind. After years of war, silence had become his closest friend. He sat at his work table, a single lamp flickering beside him, the soft hum of the generator filling the air. On the wall hung an old photograph, a group of humans in military uniforms smiling, their eyes full of hope. Alan stared at it for a moment, then turned away. The past, he had learned, was better left untouched. Outside, the wind grew louder. The storm was coming again, faster and stronger than before. Alan went to seal the outer shutters, checking the pressure seals on the air filters. The air on Vetra 9 was thin and laced with acid dust. Stepping outside without protection was a death sentence. As he worked, his scanner began to beep, a soft, urgent rhythm that broke the calm. Alan frowned and looked at the screen. Something was moving out there through the storm, a life form. He adjusted the radar, watching the signal flicker in and out as the storm's magnetic field distorted the image. "No way," he muttered. "Nothing survives out there." But the signal was real, heading straight for his hut. Alan grabbed his respirator mask and stood by the door. The outer sensors picked up a faint knock, 3 uneven thuds, then silence. He hesitated. It could be debris. It could also be trouble. Vetra 9 was not a friendly planet. There were alien colonies scattered across its deserts. Dravari, they were called, a species humanoid in shape but biologically different, adapted to the harsh world long before humans arrived. The Dravari didn't like humans much. The old wars had left deep wounds between their races. Alan had never met one in person, but he'd heard enough stories to know they avoided human outposts. The knock came again, louder this time. Alan took a slow breath and opened the door. A figure stumbled in, half collapsing as the storm howled behind her. She was tall, slender, wearing torn silver armor that was half melted from acid rain. Her skin shimmered faintly, a soft shade of violet, and her eyes glowed like molten silver. For a second, Alan just stared. He had seen many strange things in the galaxy, but nothing like her. The woman froze, her eyes locking onto him. Her breathing stopped, her body trembling. Then she whispered in a fearful voice, "Human." Alan didn't move. "You're hurt," he said calmly. "Sit down." But she stepped back, her hand rising defensively. "Don't come closer." He raised both hands, palms open. "Easy. I'm not going to hurt you." Her gaze darted around the small hut, the tools, the light, the human food packets. Every detail seemed to make her more tense. For a moment, she looked like she might bolt back into the storm, but the wind outside roared so violently that even she knew escape was impossible. Alan pointed toward a nearby stool. "If you stay out there, you'll die. The storm's acid level is already at lethal range." She didn't answer. He sighed. "Fine, you can stand if you like. But at least let me close the door before the storm eats my roof." He pressed the control panel, and the metal door slid shut with a heavy click. The room fell silent except for the sound of their breathing. For a long moment, neither spoke. The alien woman looked around, unsure of what to say or do. Alan kept his distance, watching her with quiet curiosity. Finally, she lowered her hand slightly. "You are alone?" she asked cautiously. "Yeah," Alan replied. "Been that way for a while." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" Alan shrugged. "Someone's got to keep the equipment running. Guess I drew the short straw." There was something fragile in her expression, as if she didn't know whether to pity him or fear him. "I thought humans worked in groups," she said. "Usually," he replied. "But sometimes being alone is easier." She looked at the sealed window where lightning flashed outside. "You saved me," she said softly. "Why?" Alan tilted his head. "You knocked." I answered. "That's what decent people do." She looked at him sharply, as if the word decent was foreign to her. "We were told humans have no mercy," she said under her breath. Alan gave a quiet chuckle. "You shouldn't believe everything people tell you." The silence stretched again. She seemed to be struggling between gratitude and fear. Finally, Alan took a step back toward his table, keeping his voice gentle. "You're safe here," said, "if you want. There's water in that jug, and it's clean." After a pause, she slowly crossed the room, her movements cautious and graceful. She poured a little water into a cup and sniffed it before drinking. Alan went back to his tools, pretending to work while secretly watching her reflection in the metal wall. She was different from what he expected. Not the savage alien the reports described, but someone exhausted, frightened, and intelligent. Her armor bore an emblem, a circle with 2 crossed lines. He recognized it from his database. It was the mark of the Dravari Research Corps, so she wasn't a soldier. She was a scientist. "You're with the research division," he said quietly. She looked up, surprised. "You know our symbols?" "I used to read mission logs," he replied. "Guess I remember things I shouldn't." She studied him for a moment, then said, "You fought in the war, didn't you?" Alan paused, his hand tightening around a wrench. "Yeah," he said finally. "A long time ago." Her voice softened. "My people remember that war too. It took much from us." "Same here." They both fell silent again. The storm outside was relentless, hammering the metal walls like a living creature. After a while, Alan noticed her shivering. He went to the heater and adjusted it, making the air warmer. "You can take off the damaged armor," he said gently. "You'll rest better without it." She hesitated, clearly unsure if she could trust him. But then she looked at her melted armor plates and sighed. Very well. Underneath, her clothing was simple, woven from metallic fibers that shimmered like water. She moved carefully, still keeping distance from him. Alan handed her a small packet. "This will help with the burns," he said. "It's a neutralizer. Works on acid exposure." She took it carefully, her long fingers brushing his glove for just a second. Then she froze, as if shocked by the simple touch. Alan noticed but said nothing. He turned back to his table, giving her space. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter. "My name is Lysera." Alan nodded. "Alan Reed." Lysera's eyes lingered on him, thoughtful. "Alan Reed," she repeated as if memorizing it. "You live here, alone, surrounded by storms. Are all humans like you?" He smiled faintly. "No, most are smarter than me." She didn't smile, but something in her expression softened. The fear in her silver eyes began to fade, replaced by curiosity. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside that small hut, 2 enemies from different worlds stood only a few feet apart, both uncertain, both wary, but somehow, both alive because of each other. Lysera looked toward the window again, watching the blue lightning strike the horizon. "When the storm ends," she whispered, "I must find my ship." "My people will be searching," Alan nodded slowly. "Then rest while you can. You'll need your strength." She hesitated, then sat down on the stool he'd offered earlier. "You are not what I expected," she admitted quietly. Alan looked up from his work, meeting her gaze. "Neither are you." For the first time, the corners of her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. And as the storm thundered outside, Alan realized that this night, on a lonely, distant world, would change everything he thought he knew about aliens, about the war, and about what it truly meant to be human. The storm outside continued to roar through the long alien night. The metal walls of the hut trembled under the pressure, but inside the air was calm and warm. The faint hum of the generator and the smell of old machinery gave the place a sense of safety, a feeling Lysera had almost forgotten. Alan sat near his small desk, fixing a power converter. Sparks of light flashed across his gloves as he worked. Lysera watched him from the stool, her silvery eyes filled with silent questions. The human looked tired yet steady, like someone used to loneliness. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "You are not afraid of me," she said softly. Alan looked up, a half smile crossing his face. "Should I be?" She tilted her head slightly. "Among my people, humans are said to be unpredictable, dangerous." Alan set his tool down. "I guess your people aren't wrong," he said. "Humans can be dangerous, but we can also be kind. Depends on what you bring out in us." Lysera studied his expression, searching for deceit. There was none. Only quiet honesty. "Then maybe," she murmured. The stories were not complete. Outside, thunder cracked, shaking the floor. Lysera flinched slightly. Alan noticed. "You should rest," he said. "That storm won't calm for a few hours." "I cannot," she replied. "I must repair my beacon. If my people cannot find me, they will think I am lost or taken." Alan leaned back in his chair. Your beacon's probably fried by that lightning, but if you give me the device, I might be able to fix it. Her silver eyes widened. You would help me? Sure, Alan said with a shrug. You're stuck here, same as me. Might as well make the best of it. She hesitated before handing him the small metallic disc that hung from her belt. It was cracked, its inner circuits dark and corroded by the acid rain. Alan examined it with care. Yeah, he said, it's badly damaged, but I think I can repair it. Lysra watched his fingers move across the delicate wires, his focus sharp and patient. You have skilled hands, she said. Used to fix field equipment during the war, Alan replied. If I couldn't repair things fast, people died. She looked down at her hands. I built tools to study the sky, she said quietly. Not for war. But when the fighting began, our science was turned into weapons. I left the army to become a researcher. Still, the war never truly left us, Alan nodded. Yeah, it never does. For a while, they worked together in silence. Alan soldered connections while Lysra adjusted the beacon's data core. She was intelligent and precise. Every movement careful, every decision reasoned. But even with her calm, Alan could see the exhaustion in her face. Her violet skin had lost some of its glow. She had been running for hours before finding the hut. When the repairs were done, the beacon blinked faintly but then died again. Alan sighed. We'll need more power. The core's nearly empty. Lysra looked worried. Then they will not find me, Alan thought for a moment. The communication tower I maintain might have a spare core. It's 2 kilometers east of here. But with this storm, it's suicide to go now. She glanced toward the sealed door where the storm flashed blue through the cracks. Then when it clears, we go together. Alan raised an eyebrow. Together? You trust me that much already? Her lips curved slightly. Not yet, but you know the path and I know how to stay alive. That seems enough. He laughed softly. Fair deal. The night passed slowly. Lysra drifted into a light sleep while Alan kept watch. He couldn't help but study her. The way her breathing steadied, the soft shimmer that seemed to move beneath her skin. She was unlike any life he had seen. But more than that, she was proof that humans and Dravari were not as different as everyone believed. Both feared. Both hoped. Both could feel alone. When morning came, though morning was only a paler shade of darkness on Vetra 9, the storm had weakened. The air outside was still harsh but breathable with filters. Alan prepared the gear, oxygen masks, protective suits, and 2 small plasma lanterns. Lysra examined one of the lanterns with curiosity. Your technology is crude but effective, she said. Crude? Alan grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. As they stepped out into the storm's fading mist, the world of Vetra 9 stretched around them, a wasteland of black sand and glowing rivers of minerals that flowed like molten glass. The sky was a dull gray and distant lightning danced on the horizon. They moved carefully across the rocky ground, their boots sinking slightly into the dust. The wind carried whispers that sounded almost alive. Lysra walked beside him, silent for a long time. Then she said, You do not fear this world? Alan shook his head. After years on battlefields, this place feels peaceful. Peaceful? She echoed, surprised. The air itself burns, he chuckled. Yeah, but it doesn't shoot back. That made her pause. Then she gave a quiet laugh. The sound was strange but soft, like chimes in the wind. Alan looked at her, and for the first time he saw more than just an alien. He saw someone trying to survive just like him. They reached the communication tower by midday. The tall metal structure rose from the plain like a spear pointing at the clouds. Its surface was scorched and covered with dust. Alan entered the access code, and the door slid open with a hiss. Inside, the air smelled of ozone and oil. Lights flickered weakly. Lysra followed, looking around with open curiosity. You maintain all this alone? Yeah, Alan said, checking the generator. Keeps me busy. Keeps me sane. She touched a console gently. You humans build such things from metal and fire, yet you speak of peace. It is strange, Alan smirked. We're full of contradictions. He opened a panel and pulled out a small glowing core, the power cell they needed. This should get your beacon working. As he handed it to her, she hesitated again. Alan, she said softly, if my people trace this signal, they might think you captured me. I figured as much, he replied, but I'll take the risk. Why? She asked. You owe me nothing. Alan looked at her steadily. Because someone once told me that kindness is the only thing that survives war. I guess I still believe that. Her eyes shimmered, reflecting the faint light of the power core. Among my people, she said slowly, we are taught that humans take what they want. Yet you give. I do not understand. Maybe you will someday. They began the journey back to the hut, the wind calmer now. As they walked, Lysera asked questions about Earth. The oceans, the green forests, the blue sky. Alan spoke of rain that didn't burn, of animals that roamed free, of people who laughed under the sun. Lysera listened in silence, her steps slowing. It sounds beautiful, she whispered. Our world has nothing like that, Alan nodded. Then maybe someday you'll see it. She looked at him thoughtfully. Would your people welcome mine? He smiled sadly. That depends on which people you meet. When they reached the hut again, the sky was darker, but the storm had passed. The world seemed strangely calm. Inside, Lysera connected the new power core to her beacon. A soft light filled the room and the device came alive with a faint hum. It works, Alan said. She nodded, her voice quiet. My people will find me soon. There was something in her tone that sounded almost regretful. Alan noticed it. That's good news, right? Lysera didn't answer right away. Then she said, yes, but they will not believe what happened here. They will not believe that a human saved me. Alan gave a small shrug. Then let them think what they want. She looked at him for a long moment, her silver eyes filled with something he couldn't name. Confusion, maybe gratitude, maybe both. You are not what I expected, Alan Reed, she said softly. And you're not what I expected either, he replied. That night, as the new storm clouds gathered on the horizon, Alan sat by the lamp again, staring at the softly glowing beacon on the table. Lysera was resting in the corner, her breathing even and calm. For the first time in many years, Alan felt something different in his heart. Not fear, not duty, but a quiet sense of connection. He looked at the alien woman sleeping peacefully in the place he once called his prison and whispered to himself, maybe the galaxy isn't as divided as they say. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, painting the world in silver light, and inside that small hut on Vetra 9, a fragile friendship had begun to form between two lives once separated by war. The soft hum of the beacon filled the quiet hut. Its light glowed faintly blue, sending small pulses into the air every few seconds. Outside, the skies over Vetra 9 were calmer now, the endless thunder fading into a low whisper. Alan sat beside the lamp, his hands wrapped around a mug of reheated water. Across from him, Lysera worked on recalibrating the beacon's signal strength. Her focus was calm, steady, but her eyes sometimes flicked toward him. Curious, thoughtful, almost searching. They had spent 2 days together now. 2 days that changed how both of them saw the galaxy. For Alan, the presence of an alien in his hut no longer felt strange. It felt natural, as if the silence that used to weigh on him had found a voice. For Lysera, the human who once seemed like a legend of war now felt real, tired, kind, patient. Nothing like the stories she grew up hearing. Signal output is weak, she said finally, setting the tool down. It will take time for my people to trace it. Alan nodded. That's good. Gives us time to fix more things. She looked at him, one brow raised. You are too calm for someone who may soon face an alien search team. Alan smiled faintly. After years of war, calm is all I have left. Lysera didn't reply right away. Instead, she studied his face, the faint scars, the weary eyes. Then she said softly, You have fought before. Yeah, he admitted. Long ago, back when humans thought every alien world needed conquering. Her silver eyes darkened. And you regret it? Alan nodded slowly. Every day. Silence settled again. The wind outside whispered against the walls like a living memory. After a moment, Lysera spoke in a quiet tone. My parents died in that war. I was very young, but I remember the sky burning red, the ships falling like stars. Since then, every story I heard about humans was full of hate. Alan didn't move. I lost people too, he said. Good people. I used to think it was worth it, until I saw what we became. Lysera looked down, her voice trembling slightly. I told myself that if I ever met a human, I would never speak to them. But when I saw you open the door, I realized I had no choice. The storm would have killed me. And yet, Alan said gently, you're still here. She gave a small nod. Maybe fate has strange ways. Later that day, Alan decided to check the outer sensors. The storm had moved east, and the air was finally safe enough to breathe without heavy filters. He stepped outside, his boots crunching against the dusty ground. Lysira followed, her silver eyes adjusting quickly to the dim light. The landscape stretched endlessly, a world of shadows and glowing rock. Vetra 9, Alan said. The perfect place for people who don't want to be found. Lysira smiled faintly. And yet someone found you, he laughed softly. Guess I'm losing my touch. They walked together to the edge of the ridge where Alan's relay tower stood tall against the horizon. The tower's lights blinked weakly. Does your species live like this on every world? Lysira asked. Pretty much, Alan said. We build things. Then we stay long enough to break them. Then we move on. That sounds lonely, she said. He shrugged. It is. When they returned to the hut, Lysira placed her hand on the beacon again. The blue light flickered. They will come soon, she said quietly. My people are efficient. Alan looked at her, then at the small photograph on his wall, the one of his old squad. He picked it up and smiled sadly. When they do, he said, you can tell them the truth, that I helped you. Lysira turned toward him sharply. They won't believe it. To them, humans are still enemies. If they see you, they'll think you held me prisoner. Alan's voice was calm. Then I'll hide. Her eyes widened. Hide? Why would you do that? Because I don't want another war starting over me. Lysira stared at him for a long moment, silent. Her mind was full of thoughts she couldn't quite speak. Then she said, You risked your life for me twice already. You should not have to hide. Alan looked away. You saved me too, Lysira. Without your beacon, I'd still be talking to an empty room. Her lips curved slightly, but her eyes were full of sadness. As night fell, the hut grew quiet again. Alan prepared a small meal from human ration packs. Lysira watched as he heated the food and offered her some. She hesitated, then accepted. The taste was strange to her, dry, salty. But she ate without complaint. You humans eat to survive, she said, smiling faintly. My kind eats to share memory. Share memory? Alan asked. She nodded. Our food carries light. When we eat together, we share the energy of our thoughts and feelings. It connects us, Alan smiled softly. That sounds nice. A bit more meaningful than dried meat cubes. Lysira laughed gently, the first true laugh he had heard from her. It was soft and musical, filling the small space with warmth. After they finished, Alan leaned back, looking at the ceiling. You know, he said, I never thought I'd meet a Dravari. I thought you were all gone from this side of the system. Lysira's expression grew distant. Many left after the war, those who stayed live far from human colonies. They say the stars belong to you now. They belong to no one, Alan said quietly. Stars just shine. We're the ones who keep fighting over them. A soft beeping sound interrupted them. Lysira looked at the beacon. It's receiving something, she said. A response. Alan moved closer. The beacon's light pulsed faster now. A coded signal scrolled across the small screen. They found me, Lysira whispered. A rescue ship is on its way. Alan felt a strange tightness in his chest, something between relief and sadness. That's good, he said quietly. You'll be safe. Lysira turned toward him, her expression conflicted. Alan, if they find you here, I'll go to the tower, he interrupted. Say I was never here, her voice grew urgent. They will sense your presence. Our scanners can detect human heat signatures easily. Then I'll move further out, he said calmly. There's a ridge 10 kilometers north. I'll camp there till they leave. Lysira's eyes softened. You would risk your life again for me? Alan gave a tired smile. Guess it's a bad habit. She stepped closer, her voice trembling slightly. You are unlike any human I have ever heard of. And you, he said, are unlike any alien I ever met. They both stood there, the hum of the beacon between them. Two beings from different worlds, bound by fate and a storm. When morning came again, the horizon glowed faintly pink. Lysira prepared her gear, adjusting her armor and securing the pendant around her neck. Alan watched silently. He felt something he hadn't felt in years. Attachment. Your people will be here by midday, he said. You should go meet them at the landing zone, she nodded. Yes, but Alan... She paused, looking into his eyes. I want them to know the truth. I will tell them you helped me. He shook his head. You don't have to. They won't believe it. I will make them believe, she said firmly. Alan smiled faintly. You sound stubborn. Maybe I learned it from you, she replied softly. As she turned to leave, the wind outside picked up again. Alan followed her to the door. The world beyond was glowing under the rising sun, a rare sight on Vetra 9. Lysera stopped and looked back at him one last time. When I first saw you, she said, I thought you were the monster from my people's stories. Now I see you are only human. Alan chuckled. Only human, huh? I'll take that as a compliment. She smiled faintly. It is. And with that, she stepped into the pale morning light, her figure fading slowly into the distance. Alan watched until she disappeared beyond the ridge, then turned back into the hut. The photograph on the wall seemed to look different now, as if the faces in it were smiling again. He sat by the lamp, listening to the fading echo of her footsteps. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone, but deep inside, a quiet worry grew. The Dravari rescue team was coming, and he knew that when they arrived, things would never be the same again, because sometimes peace was harder to protect than war itself. The sun rose high over the plains of Vetra 9, painting the barren landscape in shades of red and gold. The storm had passed entirely, leaving the air crisp and electric, carrying the faint scent of ionized dust. Inside the hut, Alan Reed was already awake, checking the outer sensors. His hands moved quickly, though his mind was heavy with thought. He had known the Dravari would come for Lysera, sooner or later. Not yet, he muttered to himself as the sensors showed no signs of approaching ships. Still time. He took a deep breath and returned to the small table where Lysera's beacon still pulsed softly. Its blue light had become a familiar presence, like a heartbeat in the quiet hut. Lysera stood nearby, adjusting her equipment. She had insisted on staying close to Alan until the team arrived. I have to see them first, she said quietly, her silver eyes full of worry. If they see you alone, they might think you captured me. Alan shook his head. Not if we do this carefully. I'll stay hidden until you meet them. We've done everything else right. The beacon is fixed, the signal is strong. They will come to you, not to me. She nodded, though her expression was tense. I hope so. By mid-morning, the horizon shifted with movement. Shadows appeared against the glowing dust, the sleek silhouettes of Dravari search ships. Their engines hummed with energy, casting long reflections across the sand. Alan helped Lysera prepare her suit and checked her oxygen supply. Remember, he said, stay calm and tell them everything exactly as it happened. Lysera's voice was barely a whisper. I will, I cannot lie. They would see right through it, he nodded. Good. Then there's nothing to fear. The ships landed gracefully, kicking up swirls of glowing dust. A team of soldiers emerged, tall and elegant, their silver armor gleaming under Vetra 9's light. At the front was a tall figure, commanding and proud, Commander Varric. Lysera stepped forward, her posture straight but cautious. Commander Varric, she said, her voice firm. I am safe. The human helped me. Varric's silver eyes narrowed as he scanned the hut, and then the figure of Alan partially hidden behind the table. A human? He said slowly, his tone sharp. Where? Lysera turned her head slightly, gesturing subtly toward the back of the hut. He is not a threat. He only provided shelter and assistance. Varric's gaze shifted to Alan, who slowly stood, hands raised, making no sudden movements. His calm presence contrasted sharply with the tension in the air. Lysera took a step closer to the commander. If you approach him as an enemy, she said quietly, you will destroy everything I survived to live. The other soldiers stiffened. Weapons hummed faintly, sensing danger. Varric's eyes studied Alan, then flicked back to Lysera. His expression was unreadable. And yet, Varric said slowly, humans are said to kill without reason. How can I believe you? Lysera lifted her hand, her voice unwavering. Because I am here, standing before you. He risked his life for mine. And if humans are as we were told, you would not see me alive today. Alan remained still, letting her speak. He didn't need to say anything. His actions had already told the truth. The soldiers whispered among themselves, scanning their surroundings. One of them stepped forward, weapon lowered slightly. It is unusual, the soldier said softly, for a human to act without hostility. Varric remained silent, studying the human carefully. The tension in the hut was almost unbearable. Even the soft hum of the beacon seemed louder, pulsing like a heartbeat in the quiet room. Finally, Varric stepped forward, lowering his weapon entirely. "You speak truth," he said. "The human shows mercy, that is." Lysera's shoulders relaxed slightly. Alan nodded quietly, his mind racing. He had expected conflict, suspicion, maybe even violence, but her words had changed everything. Varric turned to his team. "We will take the Dravari scientist and ensure she returns safely. The human shall not be harmed. This is a matter of honor." The soldiers exchanged glances, some of them nodding. Even in the midst of long-standing distrust, they recognized courage and honesty when they saw it. Lysera smiled faintly at Alan. "You are remarkable," she whispered. He shrugged, trying not to smile too broadly. Just did what anyone should. Varric, however, was not finished. "Human," he said, his voice carrying authority, "you have acted wisely. Yet you must leave this world before more complications arise. My people cannot know of your presence beyond this hut." Alan nodded slowly. "Understood. I'll leave quietly." "No trouble." Lysera's eyes shimmered. "Will you be safe?" she asked softly. Alan smiled faintly. "I've survived worse storms than these." The Dravari team prepared to leave, carrying Lysera toward their ships. She turned back one last time, her eyes lingering on Alan. "Your kindness will not be forgotten," she said. Alan nodded. "Neither will your courage." They exchanged a quiet look, not of words, but of understanding. Two beings from different worlds shaped by war and fear, yet connected by something stronger: trust. As the ships lifted, kicking up dust and light, Alan watched until Lysera disappeared into the sky. The silence returned, broken only by the wind. He returned to the hut, now empty and quiet. The beacon still pulsed softly, a reminder of what had happened. Alan felt a mixture of relief and sadness. He had helped her survive, but now their paths were diverging. Yet he knew something important had changed. Between humans and Dravari, hope had begun to grow. That evening, Alan prepared to leave the hut. He packed his tools, checked the generator, and made sure the place was secure. He paused at the door, glancing once more at the empty horizon. Vetra 9 stretched endlessly before him, a world of storms and glowing plains. But now it didn't feel lonely. The memory of Lysera's trust, her words, and her courage remained with him, stronger than any storm. He set off toward the northern ridge, where he planned to wait until the Dravari had left. Each step felt lighter than before, no longer a soldier haunted by past wars, but a human reminded that kindness could bridge worlds. Even in the silence, Alan felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. As night fell, the stars above Vetra 9 shone brighter than he had ever seen. Their light stretched across the desert sky, endless and eternal. He looked up, imagining Lysera somewhere among them, safe, alive, and returning to her people. A small smile crossed his face. Humanity had survived countless wars, countless storms, and now, on a distant world of dust and lightning, humans had proven something greater: that even in a galaxy filled with fear, courage and mercy could change everything. And somewhere far above, Lysera's ship moved through the stars. Her thoughts on the human who had shown her what she had never believed possible: that even the smallest acts of kindness could echo across worlds. The sun rose slowly over Vetra 9, painting the barren plains in shades of orange and gold. The storm that had haunted the planet for days was gone, leaving the world quiet except for the faint hum of the wind over the dust and glowing rocks. Alan Reed walked along the northern ridge, the cold wind brushing against his face. His boots crunched softly over the alien sand. Behind him, the small metal hut lay empty, silent, and secure. The beacon inside continued to pulse faintly, its light a quiet reminder of the events of the past days. He paused, looking out over the endless landscape. He could still see the faint trails of Lysera's ship as it climbed into the sky hours ago. Even from this distance, he could imagine her silver eyes scanning the horizon, thinking of him. Alan felt a strange warmth in his chest. Loneliness, which had been his constant companion, had finally lifted. Even in the harshest storm, he had made a difference, and that difference had been recognized by someone from another world. Lysera's voice echoed in his mind, as if carried by the wind. "Your kindness will not be forgotten. Alan smiled faintly. She had been afraid of him when she first ran into the hut, afraid that humans would harm her. But he had chosen to help instead of fight. He had shown her mercy, courage, and patience, and in return she had trusted him with her life. Alan continued walking toward a small valley where he planned to rest. The ground shimmered faintly under the early sun, minerals that glowed softly in the light. Even the desert seemed alive, as if it understood the small triumph that had just taken place. Meanwhile, far above, Lysera's ship traveled smoothly through the thin atmosphere, leaving trails of silver light across the sky. She looked down at Vetra 9, the world of storms and dust that had become a place of unexpected connection. The Dravari crew around her whispered quietly, astonished at what they had witnessed. Commander Varric remained silent, his eyes fixed on Lysera. He knew she had been right. The human had not harmed her. Instead, he had risked his life, acted with honesty, and given her shelter. "He saved you," Varric said finally, his voice steady but quiet. "Yes," Lysera replied, her silver eyes reflecting the faint stars above. "And in doing so, he reminded me that humans are more than the stories we were told, that even in the darkest times, courage and kindness can shine." Varric studied her for a long moment. "Perhaps we have underestimated your species and theirs," Lysera nodded. "I will make sure they know the truth." Back on the ridge, Alan found a small clearing and set up a temporary shelter. The night was coming and the stars were beginning to glow against the dark sky. He looked up, marveling at their brilliance. On a planet so harsh, these stars seemed like a promise, proof that beauty could exist even in the most dangerous places. Alan remembered Lysera's words. "I thought you were the monster from my people's stories. Now I see you are only human." He smiled quietly. That was the moment he realized why humans were capable of greatness. Not because of their strength or weapons, but because of the choices they made. The choice to help, to forgive, to act with courage when fear surrounded them. Even in a galaxy filled with danger, war, and suspicion, humans could shine. And sometimes that shine was enough to change hearts, even the hearts of those who had been trained to hate them. The next morning, Alan returned briefly to the hut to collect a few supplies he had left behind. He noticed the faint pulse of Lysera's beacon, still active. He reached out and touched it lightly, imagining her hand resting on it somewhere far above. "You'll be safe now," he whispered, "and I hope you remember that humanity is capable of good." He paused for a long moment, feeling the wind brush across his face. The desert seemed calm, almost peaceful. For the first time in years, Alan felt a connection to the universe, not just to this small planet, but to something greater. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was trust. It was hope. Lysera's ship finally entered orbit, leaving the planet behind. Through the viewports, she watched Vetra 9 fade into the distance, the glowing plains and barren ridges shrinking beneath her. She felt a strange tug in her chest, a combination of relief, gratitude, and an unspoken promise. Her people gathered around her, their expressions filled with awe. They had never seen a human act with such honesty and courage. Commander Varric spoke quietly. "We will report this. Your story, Alan Reed's actions, will change how our people see humans." Lysera nodded. "Yes, they must know. Not all humans are enemies, some are extraordinary." The Dravari crew murmured among themselves, the seeds of understanding and hope planted. Wars could end, prejudices could fade, and alliances could begin, all because one human had chosen kindness over fear. Back on the surface, Alan continued his solitary journey across the glowing plains of Vetra 9. He walked without hurry, his steps light but deliberate. The world no longer felt empty. Somewhere out there, Lysera was alive, safe, and returning to her people. He smiled faintly. "I never thought helping someone would feel like this," he said quietly to the wind. "But it does, it feels right." The stars above glimmered like distant eyes, watching the small figure of a human who had chosen courage over solitude, mercy over suspicion. The galaxy was vast, and there would always be storms and danger. But humans, he realized, could rise above it. As the days passed, messages arrived at Alan's comm relay, news of Dravari scientists returning safely, reports of rescue teams being astonished at the human who helped them. Alan read them quietly, his heart calm. The galaxy had acknowledged his choice, even if indirectly. But more importantly, Alan knew something that no report could convey. The trust he had earned, the bond he had formed with Lysera, and the proof that humans could inspire hope. Even across species, even across planets. He paused once more on a ridge looking out at the horizon. The desert was silent now except for the whisper of the wind over the glowing rocks. For a long moment he let himself simply breathe. He was alone, yes, but not lonely. He was part of something bigger. A small act of courage had echoed across the stars. And for Alan Reed, that was enough. Weeks later, reports arrived at Human Command about the unusual encounter on Vetra 9. Scientists, commanders, and explorers read the logs with astonishment. Humans had often been judged harshly by other species, but here was proof of something different. A single man, one human, had shown courage, mercy, and integrity. His actions had saved a life, prevented conflict, and earned respect across species. For the first time in decades, the galaxy began to see humans not only as survivors or warriors, but as beings capable of inspiring hope. In a quiet moment, Alan stood on the ridge once more, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, Lysera's ship traveled safely toward her homeworld. Somewhere out there, trust had been built where fear once ruled. He whispered into the wind, a promise he didn't expect anyone to hear. We may be only human, but sometimes that is enough. And in the endless night of Vetra 9, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the truth of his words. The storm had ended. The alien woman was safe, and humanity, and in its quiet, ordinary way, had proven that courage, kindness, and hope could reach farther than any weapon, stronger than any fear, and last longer than any war.